In 1991, we had an elders gathering. Not just gathering, it's where the elders told us that we were coming into a healing time. And we asked them, how do we know it's a healing time? And it was there that they started to tell us the prophecies. The prophecies about the eagle landing on the moon, the prophecies about the sun being blocked in the seventh moon. But one of the prophecies they told us is they said that a spider would build a web around the earth, all the way around the earth in all directions. And when that spider was done, he would leave, and they said then a woman would come forward and she would speak on that web and all nations would hear her voice. And what they told us that means is that as we come into this healing time, that it is the woman's voice that must be listened to, that we are too far out in the male side and we have to come back in that matriarchal way, the way it was a long time ago. So as a result of that, we formed this Women in Wellbriety movement. And it was based on the prophecy. And so we have put together 4 trainings that is especially for the women in Wellbriety. One of the trainings is called the Mothers of Traditions, and this is a 3-day program. It was videotaped, has teachings with it, and it has workbooks and facilitator manuals. Then another program that we have specifically for the women in Wellbriety is called Amending Broken Hearts. This is healing from intergenerational trauma for women. Then there's also for the women who are in treatment or in recovery, we have a program called the Medicine Wheel and 12 Steps for Women, and then a reentry program for women called Returning to the Circle. And so these are primarily the 4 trainings for the Women in Wellbriety movement. And so the Women in Wellbriety movement is getting quite organized. It has a mission statement. And the purpose of the Women in Wellbriety is to connect women who are living in Wellbriety and to support them in holistic healing and positive change for themselves, their families, their communities, and their nations. There is an awakening of women who are feeling called to this healing and change happening across Turtle Island. Women in Wellbriety is created for a space for these women to come together. They have around 700 of the women in Wellbriety have come together that they're on Facebooks, and here's where they're talking to it. And the goal of the Women in Wellbriety is to create circles in various geographic regions throughout the United States. So for example, there's a circle up in northern Minnesota, and that is to gather 100 women in that area, and then to select 4 grandmas, and then to start having the gatherings for that area. And at that gathering, they will bring their daughters. And so we have a circle forming, I think, out west and one in the northwest. And so what we see is that these circles of 100 women, they will gather to help organize and to facilitate the advancement of the wellness via the Wellbriety movement. And there has been a question came to us. They said, well, why would the circle be limited to 100 women? Then another circle would have to form another 100 women. And the best way that I can answer that is, I remember one time I asked the elders, I said, how come there's 100 eagle feathers are on the hoop? And what they told us, they said, it has to do with this. They said, when you look inside of a thunder cloud, the lightning is building in there. And they said, even though the energy is building in that cloud, you can't see it, but it keeps building, and it keeps building, and it gets to a certain point, that energy that's stored up in that cloud, a discharge will take place. And then what it turns is to lightning. It goes to, and it discharges and it lights up the whole sky with the light. And so what they told us was, let's say you have a North Pole and a South Pole, and let's say you have one community that will align to the magnetic field between the North Pole and the South Pole. So when one community aligns, then there's an energy flow between the North Pole and the South Pole. Then let's just say the second community, it aligns. And so then what you'll start to see as it aligns, now you have two energies aligned. And what they told us is that the more people or communities that align, so say you get 60 aligned, then number 61, that one will go easier because of the added energy of those before it. And they said what'll happen when the communities get to 90, 95, but when it reaches 100 alignments, just like a discharge that's in the cloud, 100 people aligned back to the teachings, 100 people aligned back to spirituality, 100 communities aligned. What they said, a discharge will take place. You won't be able to see it like lightning, but in the spiritual world, they said, all the way around the whole earth, a discharge will take place and a spiritual awakening will happen all over the earth. And so that was why we picked 100 women, because 100 women, there is a feather for each of the women in that circle. So 100 women, when it gets to 100, a discharge will take place. And as those 100 women gather, then what you will see is the four grandmas. A grandma from each of the four directions will come to guide those 100 women, to teach them and to guide them as to what they're supposed to do, because it's going to be a release of a big energy. And then they'll gather, and at these gatherings they'll bring their daughters. And so now you have the grandmas, you have the moms or the women, and you have their daughters. And I saw this saying on the internet, and it says, when sleeping women wake, mountains move. And that's what we need in our communities. We need our powerful women to wake up. We need them to organize into circles and to exchange the ideas amongst themselves and then come back to the communities so that our communities can heal. And so what we believe is happening here is exactly according to the strategy. Is this is one way to create intergenerational healing. The grandmas, they teach the moms, and the daughters are sitting listening to the teachings given by the grandmas. And of course, they're going to grow up to be women. And what you'll see we have is intergenerational awakening that will keep happening as the awakening takes place among our nations. So we believe that there will be an acceleration back to our traditional communities, that when the women are involved and help to organize, they help to form, we'll come back to that time when we are teaching the young children again how to become men, teaching the children how to become women. And of course, these women in Wellbriety circles, they're going to be taking those teachings to them. They'll be our next elders. And so what we see is the women in Wellbriety movement will play a very influential part in the healing of our nations. Just like they held our communities together before, they're now holding our communities together again. And so we think that this is going to happen very fast. It's not like in our early years where it was times of I guess I call it classical physics. We are now functioning in an area of quantum physics. It's sort of we're at the tipping point. What used to take us 5 years to do, we'll do it in 6 months or maybe a year. Things are going to happen faster. And so this is how we see the communities of the future, to where we will start to have our sober leadership and our healthy youth and men, and healthy women, healthy elders. Our warriors will be back, and our families together. And will help us to survive. No matter what changes take place in the world, if we have our culture, our spirituality, and we are back in balance with the woman power, then we will be here for a long, long time to come. So as a result of that, we formed this Women in Wellbriety movement. And it was based on the prophecy. And so we have put together 4 trainings that is especially for the women in Wellbriety. One of the trainings is called... In 1991, we had an elders gathering. Not just gathering, it's where the elders told us that we were coming into a healing time. And we asked them, how do we know it's a healing time? And it was there that they started to tell us the prophecies. The prophecies about the eagle landing on the moon, the prophecies about the mothers of traditions. And this is a 3-day program. It was videotaped, it has teachings with it, and it has workbooks and facilitator manuals. Then another program that we have specifically for the women in Wellbriety is called Amending Broken Hearts. This is healing from intergenerations would hear her voice. And what they told us that means is that as we come into this healing time, that it is the woman's voice that must be listened to. That we are too far out in the male side, and we have to come back in that matriarchal way, the way it was a long time ago, about the sun being blocked in the 7th moon. But one of the prophecies they told us is they said that a spider would build a web around the earth, all the way around the earth in all directions. And when that spider was done, he would leave, and they said then a woman would come forward, and she would speak on that web, and all nations